Alone and palely loitering, the sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight-at-arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses four. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed, ah, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamed, on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La belle dame sans merci hath thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here, on the cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing.
My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains. My sense as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute passed, and the Lethe wards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Welcome to today's episode of the Classics Show. I'm your host, Shabnam Riaz, and what I was reading, of course, many people would have been able to recognize, is Ode to a Nightingale by the famous English poet John Keats. And of course, John Keats was a very, very important poet of his time. Tragically, he did not get that much time to write, as he had amazing appeal for the work that he had done. He had resonated in so many places. As usual is the tragedy with many writers, artists, he achieved more prominence after his death, which was very tragic. He died from tuberculosis. And today's program is about John Keats. So to speak about this legendary poet, we have our expert with us today, and that is Mr. Yasin Masood, who is a visiting faculty at Quaid-e-Azam University. You're teaching global security there. You have been a literature student as well, and your interests are English literature, philosophy and poetry. Also your MPhil in international relations, which you got from the Kingston University in London. Thank you very much, Yasin Sab, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to express myself.
Right.
Thank you.
As we are talking today about John Keats, he had a tragic end where he was reaching the height of his writing, and he had come out with exquisite works at the time which were not really being received very favorably, but after he had passed away, he had acclaimed quite much more of a fame than that. Now, Keats is categorized as a romantic poet, and he was a key member of the Romantic movement in English literature. Can you explain to us what exactly is a romantic poet or romantic poetry? Where is the angle and what is the mindset behind it?
Well, it's a very important question in the first place. And to begin with, particularly for the readers and for the viewers, it's vital to understand that's where that silver lining exists. What is the bifurcation between when we talk about classic literature and romantic literature? Particularly in the concept, when we talk about English literature, the simplistic or one-line definition would be that any literature which was written before French Revolution was classic literature, and anything afterwards immediately what come up could be called as romantic literature.
Okay.
So that's the simplest definition. Although when we talk about romantic literature or romantic poets or romantic writings, there are as many definitions as you could found. Probably there are more than 4,000 definitions about romanticism and romantic literature. But there's one definition which probably is the soul of romanticism, which describes in the most befitting way, and probably there is much more consensus on that one definition. And that is something which is strange and unusual. Something which is strange and unusual.
Okay.
Now, to explain this sentence, what do we really mean by that? Basically, human beings under the skin have this instinct that they're always after something which is new. Novelty or innovation is the part and parcel of human nature. So, for example, in life, what we see on daily basis, that if we have the same routine, boredom would overpower us.
Very true.
And we would feel like, we need to do something different. And secondly, this mundane routine, which is like a continuous same work every now and then on every day and with the passing day, it makes a person feel like life is boring, life is dull. At the same time, this whole thinking makes the person down as well at the same time.
Right.
So anything which is inspiring, which is a sort of challenge, which you want to do something different, this is human instinct. And we believe that when we say, it's as the common saying goes, that every day is a new day. So every day should be a new day.
Right.
Because in bits and pieces, we have to, what we can do is, either we enjoy what we are doing, we should at least find something out of it.
Right.
And as we say that the best profession in life is that when you enjoy it to the utmost.
Because then you're not really working.
Absolutely. So, and then work with enjoyment, work with pleasure is the best combination, because at one time you're enjoying it, and secondly, this passion of your enjoyment, then it is personified, then it is translated into your work at the same time. So why we say that, something strange and something unusual, because that keeps you alive, that keeps you going.
So this romantic movement at that time, how much was it welcomed? How much were people responding to it? Was it something much needed at that time?
It was definitely, it was the need of the time. It was, when we say that there was no harm in classical literature, they used to talk about legendary things. They used to talk about epics. They used to have, they used to write about themes which were from the aristocracy. They used to talk about elites. Their protagonists, their heroes, their heroines, they had this grandeur and they had this stature of people who have epic in their lives.
So in some sort of way, we could have said that, you know, the Romantic literature was more at the average person's sort of, you know, reach and identifiable, where people were waiting for something like this to come along, where they could understand more, connect more. As we said about Keats, one of his styles, his themes, his very, very strong aspects was his ability to involve the senses and convey that all to the reader. Talking about his theme, he was, you know, obsessed with beauty.
He was.
He was obsessed with beauty, and his themes were immortality as well, mysticism.
Yes.
How can we explain that further?
Well, these are certain traits for, you know, Romantic poets, which are common with every Romantic poet. For example, if we say that Keats was the poet of beauty, so it's not possible, and mostly you would see that whether in different literature, whether it is in Urdu or any other literature, Romantic poets, they always talk about nature, they always talk about beauty, they always talk about senses. They want to embellish and beautify and decorate their words, and the message is being portrayed to the common masses. Coming back to that point, that what was the need of Romanticism and how much it was welcomed. Initially, it was started by an Italian writer, Goethe, when we talk about other literatures, but particularly in English literature, Wordsworth and Coleridge, they were the pioneers of Romanticism. They initiated how to, you know, because classic poets, they used to talk about reforms, social reforms. They used to talk about politics. They used to talk about elite class, as I mentioned. But their message was that poetry should be for the common people.
Exactly.
It should reach to the masses where their problems, their intricacies of life could be penned down in their writings, so that there has to have a connection with common people.
It was more identifiable with them.
Absolutely. And then why we call that Romantic poets have a universal appeal. We call them that they are universal, because your identity, your issues, mine issues, and the people from the rest of the world, you see, these abstract ideas are one and the same all over the world. You know, the emotions, the feelings, when you're happy, and when you have a sad mood, when you have a poignant life. So all these traits of human beings are one and the same, whether you're living in East or whether you're living in West. Exactly. And that's why there is a connection of universality.
It's sort of a yearning for the spirit, isn't it? That you want to be involved in this type of poetry. You want to be exposed to it, and you want to identify with it. So that's an inner yearning as well for this Romanticism, for the everyday life to be taken in a different angle, to be able to connect spiritually with everything, and to be able to depict things in a different way as to what ordinarily you take everyday life as.
One thing is quite important when we talk about this transition from classic poetry to Romantic poetry, was that it was not representing the whole society in the first place. It was representing a certain class of people. And people of that time were fed up of this. For example, this one sentence which is very important, and that was from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which is also pronounced in English as Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And his one sentence, it is mostly said that this one sentence became one of the prominent reasons of French Revolution, that a man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains.
Absolutely.
So you could feel that what was going on at that time. There was immense amount of frustration about that elite class. Basically, it was a revolt against the Pope as well. And because of that revolt, and with the French Revolution, the new system which we call democracy came into existence. So French Revolution is one of the fundamental, one of the paramount reasons for democracy to prevail. And because of that democracy, since you have your own say, you can talk about certain things and you can negate certain things, you can object certain things. It is against the Pope, it is against the monarchy. So it means that common people have some sort of,
It was something they could own.
value. So because of that, we can also say that then romantic poetry nurtured in that time. And when we say that Coleridge and Wordsworth were the pioneer, they initiated this concept that romantic poetry, let the social reforms is the duty and responsibility of the social reformist. It's not the responsibility of a poet. So let them deal with their own work and let the poets do what they are born for.
And the poets were the catalyst in this, weren't they?
They were. They were catalysts, absolutely. There is no doubt about it. Secondly, when we talk about romantics, one thing is quite common, as I mentioned, that they speak about nature, they speak about beauty, they speak about humanity, they speak about common things, they speak about things which are the problems of a daily life.
And a lot of imagery as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Secondly, there is always, you would see that there is a tinge of love of past in most of the romantic poets. And this is also a sort of human nature, that every passing day we believe that it's better than the coming day. So every passing...
A nostalgic sort of addiction.
Nostalgic sort of addiction. And that is why Wordsworth believed that when he recollected all his poetry later on, when he started writing at his full bloom, he believes that he could still recollect the sounds of the sleety winds and the sounds of River Derwent, where he was nurtured in his childhood. So that's where you see that this spontaneous overflow, there is always a sort of recollection of the past, and that is why there is always, we feel that there is a love towards past. This nostalgic phenomena in romantic poets, it's very common, whether it is Keats, whether it's Percy Bysshe Shelley, whether it's Byron, whether it's John Donne, you name it, all of the poets, they do talk about it.
You will have that recurring thing within them. As every artist has a personal life that has contributed either negatively or positively towards their work, what we usually see is that it's many, many stages of suffering throughout the journeys of life that have brought out the most inner creativity and have really enabled a person to search deep down into their soul and come up with things that maybe they realize they didn't even have to offer to have to express. The same is true with many poets and artists as well. Keats had quite a life full of personal tragedies as well, and love. He was in debt. Seemed that he had there was an inheritance that he was cheated out of, or something like that. So there were financial constraints as well, adding to his personal life. How much of that does define a poet? How much of that brings itself, outpours itself onto the canvas of expression?
Let me say one thing which is quite important. I would more explain it in a generic form. That's very important in all of the literatures, and it's very important in all of the arts at the same time. When we deal with arts, basically we deal with sensitivities.
Yes.
And particularly about poets, it is said that there has to be that touch of madness about them.
As they say with genius, they say that genius and madness and creativity, the three of them have a triangle where it's all very intricately sort of all linked up.
Yes, why we say that intelligence is probably more closest to that touch of madness, because one thing is quite sure about the people who deal with arts or who have this innate ability to create something. Most of them, it is a God-gifted quality. They are born with it. That is something which is within them. Then second thing, it's very important, and it's rather more psychological, that whenever we human beings, we are born with that whole trail of humanity, right from the first human being, Adam. So basically when we are born with that faculty of mind. And having said this, there is a sort of training then. You have to go through testing times. You have to go through sufferings at times.
For an artist, is that the time of their peak in life?
Yes, it is. Because you can expose, they are really exposed at those tantalizing moments. And they feel like, the inner self comes out at the surface.
Without inhibition.
Absolutely, because that is, that is within them already. And there is one probably portion of that faculty of mind where that creativity has been stored already. It's a time that when they can explore that, and it can only be explored when they reach at those critical moments. So the more they are in some sort of, the more you test them, the more you test their ability, and probably they will accept that challenge, and they will pen down certain things on the canvas. And once they write, because since I'm a poet myself, once they write, they don't even believe, they don't even feel that this is the person who is writing it. And later on, when they have a look at it, they can't believe that, have I written?
Has this come from me?
Has this come from me? Because it looks like a wonder for the same person. So at the same time, you're absolutely right. I agree with you that more sufferings at times could be at the, they could be at the peak as far as their creativity is concerned.
Which is such a, it's such a tragic sort of a link and partnership, isn't it? Because of course, when you're coming to, as you said, sensitivity, that is the key element for all artists and poets, to be able to perceive something differently as to what other people would. Now, Keats also had a profession where he had entered into medicine, he had entered into surgery, of course a very, very demanding profession. And he had that tussle with him all his life, didn't he? The poetry, the literature, the demands of acquiring a profession that was, wanted a lot of time and money as well. In the end, it was the love of literature that won, though, wasn't it?
It always wins. As I mentioned, that there has to be that touch of madness. It's a sort of passion. It is sort of that faculty of mind where you feel like once you are completely delve into it, you feel like, you have embraced that ecstasy. And ecstasy has embraced you in response. For example, I would quote one thing which is very important. Like when we talk about Wordsworth.
Right, I'll just have to interrupt you right now. We'll get back to this theme right now. We're going to show you a promo of the film that was based on John Keats, and that was Bright Star. Let's have a look and then come back to the program.
I had such a dream last night. I was floating above the trees, with my lips connected to those of a beautiful figure.
Whose lips? Were they my lips? I'm not sure he really likes me.
Mr. Keats knows he cannot like you. He has no living and no income.
He was a dreamer.
Have you got John Keats's poem book?
My sister has met the author, and she wants to read it for herself to see if he's an idiot or not.
She was a realist.
All I wear, I've sewn and designed myself.
Interim out. Poet's got to do a bit of writing.
My stitching has more merit and admirers than your two scribblings put together, and I can make money from it.
But every word he wrote inspired the rapture of first love.
A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it will never pass into nothingness.
This fall, from Academy Award winner Jane Campion, comes a romance.
As if I don't see her.
When I don't hear from him, it's as if I've died. As if the air is sucked out from my lungs. Keats is very brilliant.
Was it successful?
You taught me to love. You never said only the rich.
I must warn you.
You are already the source of so much gossip.
Apparently there is nothing I can do to persuade you of the gravity of this situation.
We must cut the threads.
No, I can't. I never will. You know I would do anything.
It is a game. It is a game to her. There is a holiness to the heart's affections. You know nothing.
Based on the true story of a brilliant poet and the bright star who was his shining light.
I almost wish we were butterflies and lived but with more delight than 50 common years could ever contain.
And welcome back to the programme, The Classics Show, where we're discussing literature, we're discussing literary giants. John Keats is the poet that we're discussing today. And the love of literature is such that, you know, the involvement is lifelong. It's a sort of a marsh from where you can never take yourself out of. And this is what we want to promote as well in the show. People who are not familiar with literature, who are not into reading, we want to bring you back and to tell you that this is something that is so crucial in today's life. And you start reading anything, and you will really, you know, you will discover a new side to yourself. And as we have in the studios, Mr. Yasir Masood, who has been excellent in explaining the different forms, techniques, and the ideas, the philosophy behind romantic poetry. You also have a favourite that you wanted to share with the viewers and read out, so you can do that.
I would like to share these couple of lines, which is at the last stanza of Ode on a Grecian Urn.
Okay.
And simply for the readers, I would like to inform that Keats is very popular, and he got fame because of his odes. So in the last stanza,
if I could just interrupt you there,
yeah.
For the viewer who's not familiar, the ode is classified as an ode because
it's classified as an ode because it is something which is like you explain something as this a non-creature or a creature is sitting in front of you, and you are just like
directly
speaking to that creature.
Okay.
So that's in more or less is one of the
That's why it's
definitions.
called an ode.
There are wider definitions of odes at the same time. Yes, these two lines, why these are so important and why I'm banking upon it, basically it explains the whole chemistry, the whole philosophy of John Keats. Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. So why we call, I mean, as we mentioned and we talking about it, that romantic poets, they talk about nature, they talk about beauty. So in case of Keats, as we say that beauty lies in the eyes of beholder, that's not the case with Keats. The Keats personification, his beauty is different, which is available, which is present in the world of eye and ear. And that is why he has reached to that stage where he was branded as a poet of beauty. What he believes is that beauty lies in the permanence.
Okay.
Beauty doesn't lie in the eyes of beholder.
Okay.
So whatever is true, and that is why he is making a sort of connotation to realize and to make people understand, and this is like he is forcing and reiterating this fact to the common people, to humanity, that you must understand that basically truth is beauty, and vice versa, and beauty is truth. Once you reach to that stage where both are at the parallel, they are at the parallel, and both have the same meaning and connotation for yourself, where you cannot find that difference between beauty and truth, where beauty and truth are present in the they have the same weightage, and that's where he says that whatever is truth, whatever is permanent, whatever something which is going to live forever is beauty.
And that again is sort of an example of his recurrent theme of immortality.
Absolutely. So what he believes is that we human beings are mortal. So he sees a life, a light in life at the same time, because of its sensitivity, because of its sensuousness. But at the same time, when it comes to death, he is more concerned about death, because that is something permanent.
Yes.
Death is true. Death is truth.
Therefore, death is beauty.
Absolutely. And he says that death is beauty. At the same time, when he says, like, this is one of the beautiful message he could ever deliver, a young guy of 18 years of age, and just look at his philosophy and his thought process.
Amazing.
That I feel like he shook the earth upside down because of only these two sentences. In one of another poems, he says that a joy of
a thing of beauty is a joy
a thing
forever.
of beauty is a joy forever.
Yes, yes.
So it means that the smallest particle of beauty, he believes that it has such a stature for him. This joy is limitless. This joy is never going to end.
And again, he's going beyond the physical. He's going to the essence of life, to the permanence, as you said.
He's going to. This is a transition from physics to metaphysics, because he is in search of reality.
Right.
And that's where we human beings also feel a sort of commonality, that, let's put it this way. For example, God is the one who created everything. God is the one who created all the creatures. Now if we beautify something, or if we believe that this is something beautiful, so directly or indirectly we are reaching to the metaphysics. We are nearly there. We are leading towards reality. And once you get more closer to reality, you would feel that there are different corridors, and you feel like you are untangling. Things are becoming, you can absorb certain things. Your understanding is like you have a different horizon now, because you're leading there.
Exactly.
So something which is created is beautiful, and you can write something on it. Think about the one who has created that beautiful.
Yes.
So
exactly.
he was going there.
Right.
And that's something which is also very sublime theme.
Very, very sublime.
And
because when he's saying reality is beauty, for many people, reality consists of things they don't want to know about. For many people, reality does consist, paradoxically, of ugly truths. So there's that interesting sort of angle there too. What would you say about that?
He went to a stage where, one, we know that his life was poignant. He had a tragic life. Put together all these things made him one of the best poets. Secondly, as we say that there was, he made an equation between beauty and truth. And then he wants us to realize that you should also know this fact, this reality. If you don't know this, it means your life is shallow. It means you haven't learned anything. So the books are not going to teach you. This philosophy is going to teach you. And this should be the basics of your understanding for the life.
And that's such an important point you have just made. It's not just about a journey of self. It's not just about the journey of the poet that you're reading about. It's what you're learning.
Absolutely.
So tell us, what has Keats taught us on a broader level? What have we learned from him?
I think I'm one of the, Keats is one of my favorites. And if I put my example, I've learned a lot. I've learned life from Keats. So whatever I am today, I owe my life to Keats as well. Because in my graduation, when I started learning English literature, I was clueless. I didn't have a clue that what literature is all about. So he's a protagonist.
So how did you get up into, sort of end up into studying English literature then? Was it just a...
I was a science student. And I felt like science is, this subject is never for me.
Okay.
I'm not for the sciences. And the science subjects were never appealing to me. I was rather more interested in arts. I was rather more interested to create something.
And that's an interesting sort of likeness with Keats as well, because he was science and arts, divided between the two.
And I felt at that point of time that I had some sort of, while reading him, I felt like he is piling up some pent-up feelings within me. And I wanted that outburst of that, which came eventually in some sort of creativity like poems or writing.
Where you have now written poems, and many of them have been inspired by Keats as well.
Absolutely. So you're coming back to your question that what we can learn, we can learn life. We can learn the chemistry of life, death and existence. We can learn ethics, and basically he is leading us towards reality. So we can learn reality from him.
I think one of the main sort of predicaments that we face is that with the onslaught of so much information, we're picking up information, our children are picking up information, youngsters, the old, whoever. There is such an onslaught of information, but to sort of get through that and filter through it and to actually get knowledge from that information and be informed and actually learn how to live, that is an art in itself, isn't it?
It is. Like, for example, I'm teaching at different universities, and I talk to my students, especially at the master's level. At times I personally feel that this is my moral duty to teach them. It's not only about subject. It's about their morals, it's about their ethics, and it is about training them so that they can live a better life. And since I'm back from the West, I feel that there is a growing need for the students so that they can understand. There has to be, literature has to be part and parcel of curriculum. Because, and why do I say this, why do I have a staunch belief in that? Because whatever I am today, I owe everything to my literature, although I'm in a different subject now. But even then I can put two and two together, and I feel like you know, it is so helpful to me, whether it is in studies, whether it is in common life, whether it is in decision making. I became a sort of religious person. I became a better human being.
And I think that would be the biggest achievement, to becoming a better human being.
And it teaches you, because it deals with life, it teaches you, you know, ethics. And literature itself is a hub of subjects. So different subjects meet at one juncture. So at that time when you are learning, when you're either when you're teaching or learning, you're basically dealing with multiple subjects at one time. So you have to untangle philosophy, you have to deal with psychology, you have to deal with history. You have to dig out facts and figures from different brains, from the person who is writing miles and miles away from you, and you find a sort of commonality. You feel that the person who is writing this is my thoughts. The person who is writing this is my reflection.
Identifiable.
identifiable. So it gets you, because you have to work a bit of, like, you have to push yourself to understand. And then this urge of madness basically comes into you because you want to figure it out. And it's sort of inquisitiveness.
Exactly, and that's exactly part and parcel of the human beings, of a nature of a human being, to be seeking forever, as you mentioned in the beginning of the program, that when life becomes too mundane, when life becomes too robotic, you will have this restlessness inside you that will want you to seek something else, go somewhere, do something, take yourself out of the box. So that's very, very relevant. Yeah.
That's very relevant, actually, with the passage of time. And with globalization and with the modern technology like internet and things like that. Although it made our life quite easier as far as education is concerned. But I personally believe that the blowbacks are quite severe.
They are.
Book reading has almost been vanished. It's been like,
we need to bring this back on a war footing, don't we? I mean, we need to give this so much importance. And as we mentioned before, that you have been writing poetry, you're a poet yourself. Many of your work has been inspired by John Keats. You also have a poem that you would like to share with us.
Sure.
So we'd like to hear that and
Sure.
also discuss a bit about that as well.
okay.
So,
Sure, thank you. This poem is basically based on a true experience, and later on, just like Wordsworth and other romantics, I recollected my thoughts.
okay,
And the title of the poem is Frozen Moment.
okay.
That one moment had million years of age, while in the midst of that fear and furor, when all alone on my own, I stopped and stared, and kept looking at those running beings, with frozen eyes, palms and shaky hands, with breathless sighs and foggy mind, with choked throat and wordless tongue. But all along, no warmth ever came to rescue me. That one moment turned me into timelessness, when all my hurries and worries just paused, as if a holy might has surrounded all over me, speechless, numbed and startled. I felt like flying into a different world, and then swiftly all the flashbacks ran over my mind. Amongst the mumbling commuters on a busy train station, I felt, let this moment freeze forever. That one moment taught me millions of lessons. I learned life, death, and existence. Ah, that tantalizing time was worthy. Even bitter bark was sweetened like honey. While looking back, I'm ready to surrender my whole life to that defining moment over and over again. And in that single moment, I traveled from nowhere to everywhere.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
It's really beautiful. Please tell us some more about this. And
well, again, this is whenever I pen down or whenever I write something on the pages, it's my internal reflection, obviously, as most of the poets do. My themes are more sort of, if I put it into words, it deals with nature. I'm a true lover of nature, and it's not that since my childhood I have been, I had this sense of feeling different weathers, and even when I was a kid, I had this craze for winds,
okay,
for skies, for clouds, for trees, for mountains, for snow falling, and
because everything is much more than just a leaf on a tree. Everything is much more than just a white patch in a blue sky. they're all symbolic to so much. That, as you know, we've been talking about, it's all about beauty. That's another reality.
Yes.
That's also the connection between nature, reality, beauty.
I could feel in my childhood that I'm a different child. I could feel that this whole nature is inspiring me in a very different way. This nature belongs to me.
How do poets deal with mood swings? Because a poet is always succumbing to mood swings. That's what dictates their work. That's what dictates their different heights of sensitivities.
It's very important. It's food for them, these mood swings, because this different mood swings would have different sorts of, they will bring different sorts of thoughts, and it will not only bring thoughts, it will bring different chemistry of creativity at the same time. Because if you live in one certain mood, you have to have that, you know, zigzag sort of feelings for certain things, and then where you can connect certain things, like you can connect nature within yourself, if I explain myself. And I was quite inspired with one of the passion which Wordsworth used to feel, as he used to say that when I walk, these mountains walk with me. When I run, these mountains run with me. When I talk, these mountains talk to me. And they respond to me, they play with me. So you see how much affiliation he had this with nature.
Yeah.
So although it's hard to explain whether I'm a classic poet or a romantic poet, I only, what I do is mostly I write it for myself.
Right.
And I just try to portray those feelings which are within me. And what happens is there is a time where I feel like, you know, I'm filled with lots of thoughts.
And it's sort of an overflowing.
Absolutely.
As
and
well,
I need,
you know, of everything coming together, and you don't know where to put all that extra expression that is coming to you.
I need that catharsis. I need that purgatory sort of, you know, thing where I can, I can create something.
How do we, as you know, you are, I think all teachers are blessed because they have that gift of being able to carry on their thoughts and carry on and teach children something that they're going to carry on for the rest of their life. What is your advice to people who are writing and just don't have the confidence to take it a step further, are a bit unsure of themselves, and think many writers, many poets, especially poets, will write something down and just think, okay, this is just for me. I'm not going to show anybody else, because if they look at this, they'll just think, what on earth is this? How do we treat people? How do we teach people to become more courageous that way?
I think when it comes to creativity, when it comes to poetry in particular, and especially in English, because we see that there are, when I talk to my certain students, and if they are creative, particularly in English, they feel shy. And they don't have this much confidence. And exactly the same thing was happening to me when I was a kid. Unwantingly, I just sent a poem for publication, and I had this, I was not confident enough that this will be published. Then first publication basically turned me into confidence.
Exactly.
That, you know, at this
a
age,
motivator.
I can write something, and I can write something which could be publishable. When it comes to creativity, it has its own language. It has its own ways and means. So poetry, prose, or any other arts, it has its own dimension.
True.
So let it flow with that dimension. You don't push yourself. You don't have to push yourself hard for this.
Right.
You only have to write. Forget about the rhyme scheme, forget about the stanzas, forget about the sonnets, because you're not at that stage.
The best poetry and the best work of art is that comes unadulterated, straight from the heart, which you have not refined, the sort of fire on words. Well, you know, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, Yasser. Thank you so much for being on the program. as always in this program, there's just so much to talk about because the field of literature is such that it has a vast array of gems, and you carry on putting all those gems into different pieces of jewelry and you just don't have enough time. But thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your valuable input in the show.
Thank you very much for, this is an honor for me. Thank you very much for that.
We really enjoyed having you here.
You.
So at the end of the day, we were talking about John Keats, one of the very, very famous names in English poetry, a romantic. And the message is that everyone inside of us, we have a gift. We have a gift that we haven't realized yet. There is something that we can give back to this world if we think hard enough and we try to retrospect. Literature is something that teaches you that. It teaches you to connect on levels that you may think that you couldn't have gone to that part of your soul or your spirit. Do pick up a book. Do pick up something to read. Do reconnect yourself with literature. It can be in any language, the language that you're most familiar with. But do carry on book reading and read the people who have made an impact in people's lives. Do read John Keats if you can, the program that we have, or the poems that we have talked about today. And see what you can take from there, because there's always something there. This is what these poets and these writers have done for us, is they've given us a gift and they've said, okay, this is what we have, take this into the world and see what you can take from that. So until the next program,